Hi everyone. Today in this video lecture we are going to cover PowerPoint slide lecture 6. Basically lecture 6 contains material for chapter 5, the latter portion of chapter 5. If you remember, in our previous video lecture and in a PowerPoint slide lecture 5 we covered the first portion of chapter 5. So in this lecture 6 we are going to cover the remaining materials in chapter 5 and finish this chapter. So last class we talked about the price elasticity of demand. We looked at how we calculate it and how what are the determinants of that and so forth. Okay, so in this class we will move forward. We will start by talking about price elasticity of supply, or it is also known as producer elasticity to price, but in general we will call it price elasticity of supply. Okay, so price elasticity of supply is basically the sensitivity or the responsiveness of a producer's behavior to changes in prices. So again, what it tries to tell us is basically when there is a change in price, how do the suppliers of products of different types of goods and services react to that change in price. That is what is measured during the price elasticity of supply. I'm going to show you the formula for the price elasticity of supply. Again, just like the price elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of supply can be calculated using two weights, the midpoint method and the percentage method. And whenever I ask you to, whenever I give you a problem and ask you to do the calculation or to calculate the coefficient, I will tell you whether to use the midpoint method or whether to use the percentage method. So let me first write the formulas so you know, and again there are two methods and I will tell you specifically which ones to use, okay, when I give you a problem. So first is the percentage method, and under this the formula is given by PES. This is price elasticity of supply, is given by percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. So that's very easy. And then we have the midpoint method, which is very similar to the demand side. We have the numerator, we have the denominator, and we calculate based on that. Okay, so price elasticity of supply is equals to QS1 minus QS2 divided by QS1 plus QS2 divided by 2. Then this whole thing is divided by P1 minus P2, which is the change in price, then P1 plus P2 divided by 2. So that is the midpoint method, and if you see, this is very similar to the midpoint method of price elasticity of demand, just instead of quantity demanded we are replacing that with quantity supplied. Okay, and the coefficient of price elasticity of supply can be greater than 1 or can be less than 1. Okay, and when, and that's, I want to give you that criteria, when the price elasticity of supply is greater than 1, if the coefficient that you calculate comes out to be greater than 1, in that case it is said to be elastic. What that means is producers are very sensitive to the price changes. So if the price increases by 1%, producers will increase their quantity supplied by 2% or more, you know. Similarly, if price decreases by 1%, producers will decrease quantity supplied by 2% or more. So the percentage of quantity supply is greater than the percentage of a change in price when we have elastic price elasticity of demand. Okay, and in the case we have price elasticity of supply less than 1, then it is called inelastic. That means the producers are not very responsive to the changes in prices. So if the price increases by 1%, producers will probably increase output by 0.5%. or 0.25%. On the other hand, if prices decrease by 1%, producers will decrease output by 0.5%. So the percentage change in quantity supplied is less than the percentage change in price. So this is your criteria, so make sure you understand. And I'm going to do an example now so that you are very clear on what's going on and how you can calculate it. Okay, so let's say you're given with a table. Okay, so let's say you're given with a table. You have several different points, then you have the price, and then you have quantity supplied. Okay, so A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, and then as price increases, we will see that supply will also increase, right? Because the law of supply says as there is a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. So if price goes up, quantity supply will also go up. So this is 25, 45, 75, 105, 125. Okay, so this table is given to you. Now I will, let's say tell you we move from point B to point C. Okay, what is your price elasticity of supply using percentage method? Okay, so that's very easy to cover. If we move from point B to C, so price elasticity of supply is going to be percentage change in quantity supplied, which is 75 minus 45 divided by 45 times 100. That's your numerator, divided by 9 minus 8 divided by 8 times 100. So what we end up with this number is, if you calculate using a calculator, you will see what you get is equals to, let me use the calculator to see what it is. I'm calculating. So the numerator will be 75 minus 45 divided by 45. So in other words, it will be 30 by 45 times 100. Then you have 1 divided by 8 times 100. 100 cancels out. So it comes out to be, if you calculate and put all the numbers, it comes out to be 5.33. So that means this number is greater than 1. So that means the price elasticity of supply is elastic. So that means whenever there is a change in price, the percentage change in quantity supply will be greater. Look at here, the proof is here. The price increased by $1, but quantity supplied increased by a greater percentage, so that's what it is. It's probably increased by 5.33%, and that's what the price elasticity of supply will help us to calculate. Hopefully this example helps you to understand what we are trying to achieve here. Now, last class we also talked about, the elasticity of demand has several determinants. Same way, the price elasticity of supply has several determinants. Okay, so the elasticity of supply coefficient is dependent, or the different types of determinants of price elasticity of supply is the amount of time producers have to adjust quantity supplied with price. So the main determinant of price elasticity of supply is the amount of time that suppliers need in order to adjust their output in response to the change in price. So let's say the price changes tomorrow for a water bottle from $1 to $2. How long will it take for the water bottle producers to increase the production to show a reaction to this change in price? Okay, and based on that, we have divided the time frames into 3 possible ways. Okay, so there are 3 possible time frames for the suppliers. First one is called the market period. Market period is the immediate period. So let's say price changes tomorrow, what will be the supply tomorrow? If the price changes today, what will be the supply tomorrow? So that's the market period, immediate time frame, and during this period there will be no change in output. Okay, and I'm going to go over each of these shortly. The second one is called the short run or intermediate period. This is like 3 months or 4 months. Okay, and then long run is basically in the long run how we can change the output because there has been a change in price in the market. So now we're going to go into details about each of these time periods to see how it affects the price elasticity of supply, because the main determinant of price elasticity of supply is the amount of time needed for producers to adjust their output to changes in prices, right? And that time we are dividing into 3 parts: market period, then we have the short run, and then we have the long run. So what is the market period again? Again, it is the immediate market time frame. If the price changes today, how will producers react tomorrow? Okay, so in reality, in the market period, the price elastic supply is very inelastic. It is very unlikely that I can produce a water bottle, or I can increase the number of water bottle production tomorrow and increase my output. Okay, so that's why even though the price increases, there is very little change in my output. So therefore I'm insensitive to the price change in the market period, and that's why it's inelastic. Now another example would be a cabbage farmer. Let's say a farmer sells the cabbage when the crop will mature. Now as market demand increases, the farmer cannot change the quantity supplied by planting more cabbages, but the farmer can ration existing supply by raising prices. So what happens is, if the price of cabbage goes up in the market tomorrow because of increased demand, the farmer cannot just put cabbage in the field today and start producing cabbage tomorrow. It will take some time for the cabbage to ripe, and so they can crop for the cabbage to mature, so that it works as a crop and they can sell in the market. So in the immediate market period, it will be almost inelastic. It will be perfectly inelastic because you do not have time to change your output. So the graph wise, if you look at the graph, how the supply curve will look like in the 3 different time periods. So now we are talking about the market period, which is the immediate time period. So if we have the market period, it will be a perfectly elastic supply curve. So when there is an increase in demand for cabbage in the market, look what's happening. The price is going up. The price is going up because that's how they can ration it, but they cannot increase the output because it's a very short period of time to produce cabbage within 2 or 3 days. Okay, so that's not possible. So in this case, the price goes up, but there is no change in quantity supplied. So that's why it's perfectly, in this case, we have a perfectly inelastic situation. Alright, so that's the first time period. Now we look into the short run period. Okay, short run period is also known as the intermediate time period. It is the time period such that producers can increase to capacity but cannot increase capacity. So the elasticity of supply is relatively elastic. So again, let me give you an example so it's very clear to you guys what I'm trying to say. Let's say I have a room to produce shoes. Okay, I have a factory room. I own a factory, and there is a room where I produce shoes. Okay, now I'm utilizing 50% of the room to produce shoes. Okay, and the price of shoes go up. Now in the short run, I can increase the output of shoes by utilizing the entire room because there is more demand for shoe now. The price has gone up, so I can make more profit by supplying more, right? So that it makes more sense for me to use the entire room so I can produce more output and sell it. But I can only increase it up to the point that is allowed by my room, right? I cannot go beyond my room. I'm limited by the dimensions of my room. Okay, so that is what is meant by capacity. I can go up to, in the short run or in the intermediate period, when there is an increase in price, producers can go up to capacity to increase output, but that's it. They cannot go beyond capacity. The maximum capacity is fulfilled. So again, let's say I had a room, I was utilizing it 50%, but now I go up to 100%, utilizing the 100% maximum capacity to produce the goods, to increase the supply. That's why it's relatively elastic, because when there is an increase in price, I'm also increasing my output by some amount, so it's relatively elastic. Okay, and as a result, the graph will be upward sloping. Supply curve will be upward sloping, and I want to do that here. So let's say we have short run, and then in the short run the supply curve will look like this. So if demand goes up for shoes, look what's happening. Price is going up and quantity supplied is going up too. Okay, that's why it is called elastic situation. Short run is elastic situation. Then finally we move on to the last period, which is called the long run period. It is a time period in which the factors of production are no longer fixed. So in the long run, you can, let's say I was producing shoes in a room. Now in the long run, I can move to a bigger room and start producing shoes, right? In the long run, I can hire more labor, right? In the long run, I can have more material. I can have more sources of material. I can just use, instead of one room, I can use two rooms. I can use three rooms. So these factors of production are not fixed. So that's why I can increase my output as much as I want, and therefore it is more elastic in the long run. Okay, so the long run, the price elasticity of supply is more elastic, and there's no restraints on resources. An example of this would be when I'm moving from a smaller plant to a larger plant with larger room size, that increases my input resource as well as my output. Okay, so in this case the supply curve will be less steep compared to the short run period. Okay, short run period, the supply curve was steep, but in the long run the supply curve would be less steep. So it will look like something like this. Let me show you. It will be less steep. Demand, so if demand increases from D1 to D2, the price goes up, but look at the extent by which the quantity of supply is increasing. Quantity of supply is increasing by a greater percent. So to a small percentage change in price, there is a large percentage change or increase in quantity supplied. So that means this refers to an elastic situation, or more elastic compared to short run. So probably in the short run we will have a coefficient of between 1 to 5, and in the long run we'll probably have greater than 5 elasticity, price elasticity of supply. Just an approximate. So hopefully that helps you to understand the price elasticity of supply, how we calculate that, and what are the determinants of price elasticity supply, and how the supply curve looks like in the market period, in the short run and in the long run. Now there's price sensitivities to government set prices as well. We have price ceiling and price floor. So price ceiling is when the government sets a legal price ceiling, which is basically it sets a maximum price that the sellers can charge, and it is usually below the equilibrium price. And in case of price floor, it is again a type of price that the government price policy that the government comes up with, and this price is above the equilibrium price, and it is the minimum price that sellers can charge in the market. Okay, so that can also have sensitivity issues. Okay, so let's get into more details. So price ceiling is basically the maximum legal price a seller may charge that's greater than the equilibrium price. Okay, that is below the equilibrium price. I'm sorry, for price ceiling, it is the maximum price that sellers can charge, and it is below the equilibrium price. Okay, when consumers and producers are elastic to price, this will result in shortage. So let me draw the graph to explain you this. Okay, so let's say we have a price ceiling situation. Okay, price ceiling. This is the demand curve, this is the supply curve, this is the equilibrium price, this is the equilibrium quantity. Okay, but then government comes in and says, uh-oh, no, you cannot charge this. This is the maximum price that you can charge in the market. So that's price ceiling. So what's happening? In terms of elasticity, what's happening? Now that the price has gone down, and if the consumers and producers are elastic to changes in prices, what will happen? If there is a decrease in the percentage of price, then the percentage of quantity demanded will go up, right, by a greater percentage. So D2. But if the suppliers are elastic, if the percentage in price goes down, then the percentage of quantity supplied will go down by a greater percentage. So that's S2. And what is this curve? We have less supply, we have more demand, and in this situation we will have shortage, especially when consumers and producers are elastic to price changes. So this is in the case of price ceiling. Now let's look at price floor. It's just the opposite. What it is, it's again a government pricing policy. Under this, again we have the demand curve, supply curve, and this is the equilibrium. But this time the government comes in and says and sets a price that is above the equilibrium price. Okay, but that's the minimum price that the producers can charge in the market. So this minimum price is greater than an equilibrium price, and if producers and consumers are elastic to price changes, what's going to happen? The price is much higher. So when there is a percentage change in price, in case of elastic, the percent change in quantity demanded will be more, right? So demand will fall. On the other hand, if the suppliers are elastic, if there is an increase in price, the percentage change in supply will be at a greater percentage. So that's supply. So in this case, we have overabundance of supply and less demand. So we have a surplus situation in which, again, if consumers and producers are price elastic. Okay, so that's price ceiling and that's price floor. Then that shows the graphs, and because consumers and producers can be elastic for a type of product, we can have situations such as surplus and we can have situations such as shortages. So an example of a price floor would be the minimum wage legislation, right? If the government comes in the market and says, hey, to the companies, they say the minimum you have to pay $10 the labor, then farms, what they will do, they will demand less labor, right? Because their cost of production will go up. On the other hand, more people will be willing to work because they're going to get paid higher. So that's when we are going to have a surplus of worker, but the demand for worker will be less. Okay, then there is another concept called income elasticity of demand. We looked at price elasticity of demand, we looked at price elasticity of supply, then we move on to income elasticity of demand. There's also another one called cross elasticity of demand, which we are going to look at it shortly. So income elasticity is basically the responsiveness or sensitivity of quantity demanded of a good to a change in income. So if if the income of people go up, how will the quantity demanded for a particular type of good will be affected, or how will people respond to quantity demanded for a particular type of good if their income goes up. Now in this scenario, price remains fixed, nothing's happening to the price. We are thinking the price in the market remains the same, but you get a promotion, your income goes up. So based on that, how will you react to the quantity demanded of a particular type of good? Okay, now based on the coefficient we can determine if this is an inferior good or if this is a superior good, or if this is a normal good. And in previous classes we discussed what's inferior, what's luxury, and what's normal good. Okay, so there is a formula again to calculate income elasticity of coefficient, and for this time there's no two separate formulas, it's only one formula, so that's good. So you can use that formula. So I'm gonna do the formula first, and then I'm gonna do an example, so it's clear to you guys how we are doing this type of calculations. Okay, so income elasticity of demand, in short I will write IES, is given by percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in income. Now remember, here we are assuming there is no change in price in the market, but your income changes. So how will your quantity demanded for milk change? How will your quantity demanded for cars change? So that's what it is. Okay, so now let me do an example and show you how to calculate this coefficient and what does this coefficient mean. Okay, so let's say your monthly income is given and the quantity demanded for watching movies is given. Okay, so if your monthly income is $4,000, then you're going to watch 2 movies per month. If your monthly income is $5,000, then you will watch 3 movies per month. And if your monthly income is $6,000 per month, then you will watch 4 movies per month. Okay, in the theater, not in the TV or not at your home. In the theater you buy the ticket and watch 3D or IMAX, and that's, you're going to spend money on that. Okay, so now let's say I give you, when your income goes up from 4,000 to 5,000, what is your income elasticity of demand? Okay, and in other words, and based on the coefficient, what can you tell about the product? That's what I can also say. Is it a normal good? Is it an inferior good? Is it a luxury good? So you have to define that. Okay, same way we will do it. Income elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity demanded. So the new, after 5,000 you will watch 3 movies, before you were watching 2 movies, divided by 2 times 100, that's the numerator, divided by divided by 5,000 minus 4,000, percentage change in income divided by 4,000 times 100. 100 cancels out, it comes out to be half, divided by 1 by 4, and we end up with a number 2. Okay, so when we have anything, if the income elasticity of demand is positive, then that is a normal good. So in this case, watching movie, what type of good is that? That is a normal good. Okay, in the case income elasticity of demand is negative, that is an inferior good, because if your income goes up, you're going to spend less on this type, you're going to demand less of these goods such as used cars or used clothes, you know, so the demand will go down. That's why it will be negative. This answer, you will get a negative number, so it can be a negative number as well. And if it is greater than, usually if it is greater than 5, then it is called luxury good. Okay, so these are the criteria. Now remember, price elasticity of demand cannot be negative. It can be between 0 to infinity. Again, price elasticity of supply can also be between 0 and infinity, but income elasticity of demand can be a negative number, and if it is negative, it represents that the good is an inferior good. If it is positive, then it is a normal good, and if the number is greater than 5, then actually it is a luxury item. Okay, I want to do another quick example with inferior goods, just to show that we can end up with a negative number, so you guys are clear on that. Okay, so let's say you're given with annual income $35,000 and $40,000. Okay, so you're in this is for 18, and let's say in 19 you get a promotion and your income goes up to 40,000 per year, and demand for used clothes is also given. So in general, we know used clothes is probably an inferior good, but let us find out if it meets the criteria. Okay, so again, we calculate the income elasticity of demand. On top we will have the percentage change in quantity demanded. So this time it's going to be 20 minus 25 divided by 25 times 100. Then the whole thing is divided by 40 minus 35 divided by 35 times 100. Okay, so here we will see we end up with minus 1 by 5, and here we end up with 1 by 7. So the end answer is minus 1.4. And look at this, this is a minus number, therefore this good is inferior. It is an inferior good. Okay, so I just wanted to do this example to show you that we can have a negative number, and that's okay, but only with income elasticity of demand. If we have a negative number, that negative number represents inferior good. If it's a positive number, then it is called normal good. Okay, so moving on, again this slide gives you more details. For superior nominal goods, superior good means luxury goods. You know, consumers will increase their demand with an increase in income. A superior good or a normal good will have a coefficient of income greater than 0. Examples include purchase of new cars, yachts, etc. On the other hand, inferior goods will have negative coefficient. Therefore, the greater the income, the lower the quantity demanded response. Okay, purchase of used cars, purchase of beans, or purchase of used clothing. Now, the last concept is known as the cross elasticity of demand. This is also a type of measurement which helps us to measure the sensitivity of the change in quantity demand of one good when there is a change in price of another good. Okay, so it tests the relationship between the two goods. So let's say if the price of water bottle goes up, how will it affect the demand for tap water? That's just an example I'm saying. Okay, so that is what it's trying to see. It's trying to, or if the price of Pepsi goes up, how will it affect the quantity demanded for Coke? So it is trying to see that relationship and figure out what is the relationship between the two products. Now I will do a I will show you give you the formula, and I'll do an example. But remember, when we end up with a positive coefficient, in this case, if we end up with a positive number under cross elasticity of demand, that means that the two goods are substitutes. So if we have Coke and Pepsi and we have a positive coefficient, means Coke and Pepsi are substitutes to one another. That means they can be replaced by one another. On the other hand, if the coefficient is negative, then the goods are said to be complementary. Let's say laptops and software or Microsoft Office software. How, if the price of laptops go up, how will the quantity demanded for Office, the software will be affected? So we test the relationship, and if we get a negative number, we can say they have a complementary relationship. Okay, so let me now do the formula. First do the formula, then we are going to do a math problem, so you guys are crystal clear on this, and you can always rewind back and see what I said and how I did the problems. That's the best part of video lectures. And again, if you are not clear, you can always ask me on how I'm doing the things. But the formula to calculate cross elasticity of demand, and I am shortening it as CED, is percentage change in percentage change in quantity demanded for product A divided by percentage change in price for product B. Okay, so that is the formula. Now let me do a math problem so it is very clear to you guys. We are given with the price of Coke, we are given with the price of Pepsi, we are given with the quantity demanded for Coke, we are given with the quantity demanded for Pepsi. So we have 4 columns in the table. Okay, so let's say the price of Coke goes up from $2 to $2.5. Price of Pepsi remains the same at $2. Now quantity demanded for Coke was $1.50 when it was $2, but when the price went up, because of law of demand, as there is a negative relationship between quantity demanded and price, the quantity demanded for will fall, and let's say it drops to 120. And then for Pepsi, we actually see there is an increase in quantity demanded because of the change in price, although the price of Pepsi did not change, it remained the same. Okay, so now we calculate the cross elasticity of demand and figure out if Coke and Pepsi are substitutes or if Coke and Pepsi are complements to one another. Okay, so we will use the formula that's given above, percentage change in quantity demanded of Pepsi, so which is 140 minus 120 divided by 120 times 100. This whole thing will be divided by the percentage change in price of product B, which is Coke in this case. So that is 2.5 minus 2 divided by 2 times 100. And if you put these numbers in the calculator, you will end up with a number equals to 2/3, and that is a positive number. What does that mean? That means if we have a positive number, Coke and Pepsi are substitutes. So if the cross elasticity of demand is a positive number, it is called substitutes. Now if we had this number to be negative, then it would have been complementary. Okay, so complementary goods are goods that are purchased together and they are usually negative, the coefficient. Example includes digital camera and memory sticks. Okay, and on the other hand, substitute goods can be replaced with one another and the coefficients are greater than 1. Okay, greater than 0. If it is positive, as long as it is positive, it is substitute. If it is negative, it is a complementary good. Okay, like Coke, Pepsi, or Sweet and Low and NutraSweet. So that's the end of chapter 5. I'm going to stop here. In the next video lecture, which is going to cover PowerPoint lecture 7, I'm going to start chapter 6. But for today, that is it. Thank you.